Today, I want to introduce you to a book form 2023, Going Infinite by Michael Lewis. This isn't another ordinary business tale. It's a recent real case with rollercoaster ride through the highs and lows of a modern-day tycoon. The term infinite here represents limitless wealth and ambition, which is central to our story about a mysterious magnate. Who is this new magnate? How did he go infinite and how did he fall? Don't rush. Let me tell you a story first. In the winter of 2021, the founder of a stock exchange in New York approached the author Michael Lewis with a request. The exchange was planning to expand its business and wanted to acquire a share of FTX Trading Ltd, the third largest cryptocurrency exchange in the US, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. However, background checks presented conflicting information. On one hand, FTX's trading volume was astonishing, highly sought after in the financial world, and valued at $32 billion. On the other hand, its founder, Sam Bankman-Fried, was a mysterious figure. At 29, Sam was reclusive and almost unknown in the industry. In less than 2 years, he had turned FTX into a cryptocurrency giant, a process that seemed incredible. The New York acquirer wanted to find out if Sam was reliable. Why was Michael Lewis, the book's author, the right person to inspect the goods for such a significant transaction? As it turns out, Lewis was not only a renowned American financial writer, he is also a former Wall Street bondbroker who was highly knowledgeable about financial trading. His forte was uncovering and writing about the financial industry's inside stories, something the average minor player couldn't deceive him with. Upon receiving his friend's request, Lewis immediately engaged with Sam, spending days and nights with him. He discovered that Sam was truly remarkable. Sam lived like a programmer, owning only one set of clothes and sleeping in the office every night. When he met Lewis, Sam was undaunted, openly telling him that his parents were professors at Stanford University. He himself graduated from an Ivy League school, and he neither lacked money nor material desire. His involvement in cryptocurrency was because he genuinely believed he had found a shortcut to infinite wealth. He wanted to use this wealth for philanthropy to help people in need. Talking about the cryptocurrency industry, Sam was also very confident, inspiring Lewis with his passion. Lewis immediately called his client and advised that the deal was good and should be finalized quickly. Days later, Lewis suddenly felt something was amiss. He was supposed to find faults in Sam, but after spending several days together, he became one of Sam's admirers. The young man's confession seemed flawless. However, the idea that a set of clever speeches could generate billions in just 2 years was too fantastical. Could there be a scam? To answer these questions, Lewis decided to take a year to interview Sam thoroughly to understand his background and business model. Unexpectedly, before the interview was concluded, a major event occurred. In November 2022, Sam suddenly announced that FTX was entering bankruptcy proceedings due to an $8 billion deficit. Financial giants like SoftBank, BlackRock, and Sequoia Capital saw their investments vanish overnight. Even more alarmingly, the U.S. federal prosecutor investigating the FTX case called it one of the biggest financial fraud cases in history and sought a 25-year prison sentence for Sam. The entire cryptocurrency market was turned upside down by this case. Sam went from being penniless to making the Forbes list of billionaires, and then to bankruptcy all within just 3 years. Realizing his interview notes had become primary material for deciphering the FTX scam, Lewis decided to write this story to expose the truth and warn the public. Thus, in October 2023, he published Going Infinite. Upon its release, the book not only immediately topped the annual bestseller lists of the New York Times and the New Yorker magazines, but was also named the best book of 2023 by Amazon. It not only narrates a tumultuous business saga, but also reveals the excessive greed, vanity, and arrogance in human nature, which, when unchecked, can lead to disastrous consequences. This cautionary tale holds valuable lessons for our careers and lives. Michael Lewis, the author, graduated from Princeton University and the London School of Economics, and is a seasoned writer specializing in business stories from an insider's perspective. Since 1989, he has published 18 nonfiction works, including Moneyball, The Blind Side, and The Big Short, which were adapted into movies and received several Oscar nominations. Forbes magazine praises Lewis as the best financial storyteller in America, particularly adept at using personal stories to reveal structural flaws in the American financial system. I believe his Going Infinite will offer you a thought-provoking impact comparable to a Hollywood blockbuster. Next, I'll introduce the main content of this book in 3 parts. First, we'll look at how Sam, a nobody, entered the financial industry and made a name for himself. In the second part, I'll analyze why Sam quickly became famous in the cryptocurrency market and how he attracted massive investments. Finally, I'll summarize why Sam's FTX collapsed rapidly and the lessons the American financial world can learn from it. Ambitious outsider. Before delving into the content of the book, I want to ask you a question. What image do you have of a financial elite? Though there are no absolutes in life, after hearing about famous figures like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and Ray Dalio, many might have a standard image of a financial guru. Typically, such a person would be a graduate from a prestigious university, highly sensitive to numbers, and a master of personal finance, having been exposed to stocks and bonds from an early age. If they worked at a major investment bank or securities firm in their youth and achieved notable success, their experience would be even more persuasive. As they advanced in their career, they would appear in 3-piece suits at various economic forums and investor summits, sharing their investment insights. They should also keep up with cutting-edge technologies and international politics, always ready to spot new growth opportunities and potential risks. If they could also throw out a few quotable remarks now and then, that would be even more delightful. If we measure the protagonist of this book, Sam Bankman-Fried, against these standards, he hardly fits the elite mold. Indeed, Sam was a mathematical genius, a regular at math camps during his high school years, and later earned dual degrees in mathematics and physics from MIT. But he was a true social phobic, nervous even about shaking hands, let alone negotiating with investors. Sam's parents were Stanford professors, and he grew up in a $3 million mansion, attending a $60,000 a year elite high school without ever worrying about money, and was uninterested in investments. From his teenage years, his main hobby was playing video games, sometimes for over a dozen hours straight without eating or resting. Typically, Sam appeared unkempt, with only 2 t-shirts, often unwashed, and greasy hair as he moved in and out of the campus. He seemed more suited to be a scientist than an investment guru. How did such an oddball enter the financial world? According to author Michael Lewis, Sam was influenced by a certain ideology and a certain atmosphere. The ideology refers to effective altruism. As previously mentioned, Sam grew up in an elite family, mingling with university professors and celebrities, and possessed a high level of mathematical talent. This background made him look down on his peers, viewing them as immature. Sam believed he was born to change the world, and only people as excellent as him could shoulder this responsibility. Coincidentally, in his sophomore year in 2011, he came across a new philosophical school through blogs, Effective Altruism. This movement, founded by several philosophers from Oxford University in England, advocated the idea that global inequality exists and needs changing. However, mere hands-on charity work was not effective enough. If a person excelled in science or investment but chose to volunteer for charity, they would be wasting their talents and potential earnings. Each individual should pursue activities that generate the most economic benefit and then donate their accumulated wealth to charity, thus achieving effective altruism. Dustin Moskovitz, co-founder of Facebook, is a notable advocate of this ideology. From an outsider's perspective, effective altruism is well-intentioned, but it has 2 major flaws. First, it particularly advocates doing big things. The charitable activities it promotes are either donating vaccines to millions of people or stopping a local war, very grand in scale. This leads its followers, almost all ambitious young elites, to be out of touch with ground realities. Yet they possess a strong sense of moral superiority, always aiming to make a big splash. Secondly, doing big things requires a lot of money. Effective altruism encourages elites to engage in high-return jobs but pays little attention to the moral attributes of the work itself. To put it bluntly, as long as a person makes big money and uses it for good deeds, whether the money was obtained through theft or fraud, it is still considered a good act in the eyes of effective altruists. With the halo of doing good, all illegal activities seem forgivable. Sam was a follower of this extreme view and began putting it into practice early on. However, merely having the awareness to make big money wasn't enough. Opportunities were also needed. This brings us to the certain atmosphere that author Lewis refers to. In the second decade of the 21st century, top American universities no longer encourage students in science majors to pursue basic research. Most talented students headed to Wall Street. If you were from a prestigious university, had a good psychological makeup, and a solid foundation in mathematics, you could find a job in the financial sector starting at several $100,000 a year. Although Sam was not interested in finance, he went with the flow and submitted his resume for an internship during his junior year. He was quickly accepted by a high-frequency trading firm called Jane Street Capital. What is high-frequency trading? It involves using high-speed computers with automated programs to engage in stock and securities trading across global exchanges. For example, if an investor wants to buy 1,000 shares of Company A, these shares are spread across 20 exchanges, each listed at $10 per share. When the investor begins operating their account, the purchase command is not transmitted to all exchanges simultaneously. Due to differences in internet speed and system configurations, there are a few milliseconds of lag time. High-frequency trading firms exploit this fleeting time difference to intercept the shares before selling them at a higher price to the investor. More than half of all stock trades in the United States are completed through high-frequency trading. Jane Street Capital, the company where Sam worked, traded $4 trillion in stocks annually, making it an industry giant. So what exactly did Sam do at Jane Street Capital? On the surface, he was a high-frequency trader responsible for buying and selling index funds, sometimes involved in programming. But privately, he considered himself an observer of the financial industry, quickly formulating a very narrow set of insights. First, Sam believed that playing with finance was just like playing online games. It involved no responsibility and was not complicated. After all, high-frequency traders don't study stocks or companies. They just race against time. A few dozen traders, tapping away at codes all day, could earn the company billions of dollars annually, which was highly appealing to Sam. As for the index funds that Sam traded, he had a brilliant analogy. They were similar to sandwiches. A sandwich consists of 2 slices of bread, a slice of ham, and a slice of cheese. Sometimes, the cost of the ingredients adds up to more than the sandwich itself. In that case, he would buy the sandwich and sell the ingredients. If the market trends were reversed, he would do the opposite. In any case, both pricing and trading could be completed through computers, with Sam merely needing to tweak the code and press buttons. Sam's second insight was that personal shortcomings were irrelevant as long as the industry was booming. Although Jane Street Capital was not a small company, it couldn't compare to the top investment banks on Wall Street. Jane Street recruited employees who were overlooked by investment banks, meaning they had certain flaws in ability or personality. But the growth of high-frequency trading was so rapid that the company didn't have time to be choosy about its employees. Traders like Sam, who were completely disinterested in the market and suffered from severe social anxiety, managed to stay on at Jane Street and were even trusted. What's more ridiculous is that due to the massive volume of trades, Jane Street didn't care about each employee's performance as long as they started work on time. This made Sam increasingly believe that as long as the capital was large enough, no one could really understand the profit situation. Many of his later operations were based on this judgment. Sam's third insight was that many people in the financial industry lacked a sense of responsibility and risk awareness. When conducting high-frequency trading, he noticed that many traders would write their codes and let the computers run the programs, only making manual adjustments once every week or two. Sometimes, all he needed to do was figure out the opponent's algorithm and operate in reverse to make substantial profits. Sam started to get carried away, firmly believing that with his intelligence, it was not difficult to make a name for himself in this industry. Therefore, in 2014, after graduating from college, Sam officially joined Jane Street Capital and became the company's youngest and most promising trader within 3 years. In 2017, Sam was only 25 years old, and his annual income had already exceeded $1 million. He had been donating to charitable causes all along, but he increasingly felt that high-frequency trading could no longer satisfy his ambitions. Thus, he began to explore a completely new industry, cryptocurrencies. Alright, we just reviewed how Sam entered the financial industry. Up to this point, he was somewhat eccentric but still operated within the law and regulations. However, things started to change after that. In the summer of 2017, Sam became fascinated with a new game, cryptocurrency. That year, the global market value of circulating cryptocurrencies had already reached $760 billion, but the market rules were still very rudimentary. Traditional financial institutions, wary of high risks, had not entered this field. The existing players were concerned with how to acquire cryptocurrencies and profit from reselling them. They were almost completely unaware of the technical tools available in traditional finance, such as high-frequency trading. And what Sam eyed were the so-called business opportunities brought about by the lack of rules and technical means. When it comes to cryptocurrencies, the most familiar name to the general public is naturally Bitcoin. I won't go into the technical principles behind it, such as blockchain, here. We only need to know two things. First, cryptocurrencies advocate bypassing the real-world banking system to carry out payments and wealth transfers directly. Considering the legal and financial risks involved, most countries' governments have implemented strict regulatory measures and even bans on cryptocurrencies. Second, the market value fluctuations of cryptocurrencies are difficult to grasp. Traditional financial derivatives, like the stocks and funds traded by Jane Street Capital, are highly digitized but still based on real industries. They also experience sharp rises and falls, but there are still some patterns to follow. Cryptocurrencies are entirely different. Author Michael Lewis believes that they are almost a financial black box. But for the unconventional Sam, what he wanted was precisely this black box. As mentioned earlier, Sam was someone who didn't do investment analysis and only cared about numbers, treating financial transactions as a computer game. He wasn't concerned about the basics of cryptocurrencies. He only saw two things. First, this was a burgeoning new industry, constantly attracting capital, making it very easy to absorb investments. Second, the early trading models of cryptocurrencies were highly inefficient and had regulatory loopholes. For a financial expert like Sam, it was easy to find opportunities for profit. Thinking this, Sam decided to venture into cryptocurrency entrepreneurship. In November 2017, he resigned from Jane Street Capital, took the $500,000 he had saved, and registered a cryptocurrency company called Alameda Research, intending to pioneer new territory using quantitative trading methods. We know that any form of entrepreneurship cannot be separated from three things: team, investment, and product. Just assembling a team kept Sam busy for a while. He was a social phobic with no real foundation in traditional finance, so he couldn't recruit experienced experts. But Sam had a unique advantage. He was very influential in the community of effective altruists, and his reputation at Jane Street Capital was also good. This attracted the attention of a small group of young people from prestigious universities who were eager to do big things. Sam told these young people, "You don't need to understand cryptocurrencies or finance. You just need to know that there's a huge blue ocean market in front of us. As long as we can control 5% of the global cryptocurrency market, we can earn more than $300 million in profits each year. If we donate this money to charity, wouldn't that be doing big things? Through this persuasion, Sam recruited over 20 recent graduates from prestigious schools. And his two most important business partners were his roommate from MIT, responsible for technology, and his intern from Jane Street Capital, who was also his girlfriend, responsible for trading. At first glance, doesn't this sound like a makeshift team? How could they possibly attract investment? Don't forget, Sam had a halo around him. His team members were all from prestigious schools and had the experience of Jane Street Capital as a guarantee, making them more eye-catching than ordinary new companies. Additionally, Sam had a pair of good parents. His image in the community of effective altruists, where elites gathered, was also very positive. Through this word-of-mouth style of introduction, capital naturally came to them. Less than half a year into his entrepreneurship, Sam had already obtained over $300 million in investments. Of course, the interest rates were as high as 50%. After all, investors aren't fools. They want to see returns. Did Sam have any core products? It's quite funny when you think about it. Sam believed that his team's biggest advantage was a newly developed automated trading program. It could trade 500 types of cryptocurrencies across 30 cryptocurrency exchanges worldwide, completing thousands of operations per second. The principle of this program was similar to the high-frequency trading he had done before. But embarrassingly, Sam's program couldn't distinguish between mainstream coins and junk coins, so it kept losing money. What really enabled him to make a profit was the cross-border price difference. What does that mean? In 2017, the cryptocurrency market in South Korea was very active. The price of Bitcoin in the Korean market was 20% higher than in the United States. But there were two strict laws in South Korea. First, only local citizens could register accounts at local cryptocurrency exchanges. Second, without central bank permission, an individual could only carry the equivalent of $10,000 in cash when leaving the country, and the upper limit for a single transfer was only $50,000. In other words, although selling Bitcoin in South Korea could make money, the money received would be in Korean won, which couldn't be freely exchanged. It's not feasible to hire tens of thousands of Koreans to bring the money out in batches, right? So, how did Sam solve this problem? He used another cryptocurrency called Ripple Coin. Ripple Coin had a stronger speculative nature than Bitcoin, and the premium rate was also higher, averaging 5% higher. Sam's operation was to sell Ripple Coin using automated programs in South Korea, use the Korean won obtained to buy Bitcoin, and then store the Bitcoin on the American blockchain. Afterward, he sold the Bitcoin in the United States, collected dollars, and used the dollars to buy an equivalent amount of Ripple Coin, storing it back on the South Korean blockchain. In this back-and-forth process, nothing changed, but Sam's company earned the 5% price difference. The entire transaction was completed on electronic accounts and blockchains, and each handover took only 30 seconds. Nearly all of Sam's company's profits in the first 2 years came from this type of cross-border trading, and he thus gained fame in the cryptocurrency industry. At this point, you might have realized, Sam's business model was fundamentally unsustainable. If Ripple Coin suddenly collapsed, or the South Korean market lost interest in Bitcoin, Sam's earnings would be jeopardized. Moreover, Sam was not a qualified manager. In the spring of 2018, a ridiculous incident occurred. Sam stored $4 million worth of Ripple Coin from the United States back to a South Korean exchange. But the Korean side used incompatible codes, and the exchange only saw a bunch of Ripple Coins appearing on the account without knowing who the owner was. It took Sam a full 2 months to retrieve this batch of Ripple Coin. In the traditional securities market, this would have been a mistake that could ruin a company's reputation. But in the barbaric production of the cryptocurrency industry, no one pursued the matter, and it just slipped by. Of course, Sam was not without crisis awareness. But his approach was not to find a sustainable profit model, but to increase his capital and shift the risk to more investors. In 2019, Sam boldly announced that he had founded a new cryptocurrency exchange, FTX, which could trade all cryptocurrencies on the market and also issued an independent token. Author Michael Lewis believes that this move had two motives. First, at the new exchange, Sam was both a trader and the custodian of the platform, and his power was completely unsupervised. In the traditional securities industry, stockbrokers cannot steal money from investors' accounts. But FTX was different. Investors' money on this platform turned into colorful tokens, whose value was constantly fluctuating, and ordinary people couldn't understand it at all. In other words, if Sam moved investors' money and then fabricated some data pretending he was trading, it would be impossible to detect in the short term. Additionally, Sam also brought traditional financial capital into the game through the new platform. During FTX's Series B funding, he raised $900 million from SoftBank, Sequoia Capital, and other giants. These traditional investors, on one hand, were eager for the new industry of cryptocurrencies, and on the other hand, had no operating experience themselves, so they could only find a trustworthy agent. And Sam, with his halo and past experiences, acted as the perfect custodian of funds. The support from these giants, in turn, made him appear even more credible. Thus, a jaw-dropping legend of wealth unfolded in just over 2 years. As trading volumes rose, FTX's valuation reached $32 billion in the fall of 2022, with annual revenue exceeding $1 billion. As the company's largest shareholder, Sam's personal wealth also surpassed $15 billion, ranking him 41st on Forbes' list of wealthiest Americans. Now, he became known as the king of cryptocurrency, the next Warren Buffett, and a youth mentor. The Davos Economic Forum specifically invited him to appear, and both major American political parties began accepting his donations. Among Americans under 30, Sam was the wealthiest and most sought after. The myth of wealth shattered. Okay, we've just reviewed the process of Sam becoming a giant in the cryptocurrency industry. Hearing this, you might ask, wasn't Sam always promoting effective altruism, so did he engage in a lot of charitable activities after becoming fabulously wealthy? Author Michael Lewis believes the answer to this question is very complicated. Take 2018, for example. Sam's company earned $30 million in profits that year, half of which was returned to investors as dividends. The remaining money, $5 million, was spent on the company's daily expenses, $5 million was paid as severance to departing employees, and $3.5 million was paid in taxes, with only $1.5 million actually donated to charitable causes. In other words, the money Sam spent on effective altruism accounted for only 5% of the company's profits. Although this was not a small amount, it did not match Sam's desires and his various high-profile statements. After becoming a billionaire, Sam cumulatively donated $160 million to various charitable causes, which is certainly a large sum. However, if you compare it to his personal expenses, you'll know whether effective altruism is truly sincere. After becoming wealthy, Sam spent $32 million to buy a large house for his parents, spent $35 million to build a villa in the Caribbean island nation of the Bahamas for the company's management, and spent $15 million annually just on chartering private jets. At this time, effective altruism had already become a facade. It became part of the personal halo that Sam had created for himself. In fact, not only did charitable activities become a facade, Sam even turned his social anxiety and nonconformity into carefully crafted personal labels. According to his girlfriend's disclosure in court, after becoming famous, Sam deliberately maintained a disheveled personal image. His hair was always messy, and he always appeared in public wearing those few old t-shirts, often sleeping on the floor in the office. When meeting with investors, he frequently arrived late, and on one occasion even played the game League of Legends in front of representatives from Sequoia Capital. In the traditional circle of financial elites, this would have been unthinkable. But as the entire United States was pursuing engineer culture and advocating the abandonment of formalism, Sam's actions actually added a new halo to him. Investors began to nervously think that perhaps Sam really was a technological genius beyond his time. As long as he was still generating profits and the cryptocurrency market remained hot, they were willing to tolerate his quirks. The problem was that Sam's ability to create wealth was exactly the most unreliable. Author Michael Lewis pointedly noted that the cryptocurrency market, after excessive expansion, had no floor to support it. Its essence was a financial intermediary, serving a highly homogeneous group of speculators, making it extremely unstable. Moreover, Sam never disclosed one thing. He had taken the $10 billion that clients invested in FTX and used it for trades by his own company, Alameda, resulting in a huge deficit. And the most valuable collateral FTX had was the tokens it issued. Once these tokens were sold off, the company would immediately become insolvent. Indeed, this was the case. In November 2022, due to panicking investors causing a bank run, FTX declared bankruptcy. At that time, its market value was still listed at $16 billion, but this existed only on paper. Although creditors later recovered some of the funds, the actual losses were still extremely shocking. In March 2024, the U.S. court convicted Sam of 7 charges, including fraud and money laundering, and sentenced him to 25 years in prison. This occurred less than 10 years after he graduated from college. In conclusion, that's all I have introduced about the main content of Going Infinite. At the beginning of the book, author Michael Lewis quotes German mathematician David Hilbert. Infinity does not exist in reality. No experience, observation, or knowledge can make it a reality. Sam's story is one of chasing infinity but encountering collapse. This young man had boundless desires, claiming to strive for noble goals. He plunged into an uncontrollably expanding arena of fame and fortune, experiencing a dramatic rise and rapid wealth accumulation over 3 years, only to end up returning to zero. We ordinary people from this contemporary Gatsby's story, besides seeing the horrors of greed and vanity, also need to remind ourselves, what is truly necessary for me and within my capacity to control? Today's book discussion ends here. You can also share this book with your friends. If you like the content of Daily Book Dive, click the subscribe button to stay updated. Your encouragement helps us continue bringing book essence to our community. Congratulations, you've finished another book.